it's a different gem inside another gem that looks like the other gem, and now it's the looks at hand.
Yeah, they used Gem and the holograms. That's what it was.
Yeah, it was Gem and the holograms, exactly. Inside they were inside the gem world. Soul world.
We are way off topic.
I don't care. This is our show.
Gentlemen, let's broaden our minds.
Are they in the proper approach pattern for today?
Negative.
Hold the weapon! Now! Charge the lightning field.
The future is where we're at and where we're going.
We're going back, ladies and gentlemen, to the days of future past.
Oh, Marty! The Sentinels are coming.
Did you say the Seminoles are coming?
I said the Sentinels, but it may be...
Back in Days of Future Past, I was like, wow.
It could be... Ooh, all right. Picture this. It's a different timeline where the Native Americans ruled.
Oh, totally.
And they created giant mech robots to hunt down white men.
It's called Justice.
It's called The Way Things Should Have Happened.
Exactly. Oh, we're the worst.
It's true.
Yeah.
Stupid-ass whiteys.
Goddamn honkies.
Privilege my asshole.
I'm sure they do.
Get in there!
Watts only!
Oh. Yeah,
Boy, that's dark.
Yeah. Do we want to do welcome and then this bit? So like a welcome to Dispatch Ajax. This is Jake.
This is Skip.
That's Skip. And today we're talking about the future past.
Exactly. The future past of movie times. But if you've noticed, in the last decade or so, all of those science fiction and fantasy, mostly science fiction, films that happened in the great decade of the 80s, they were always set in the not quite distant future of 1999. So we thought we'd talk about the events in film whose dates have come to pass, the things that they predicted, and then the things that actually took place. And I think you'll be surprised at the outcome. Because I am. So this is a vague general rundown of... Okay.
Stupid computer taking advantage of me? Trying to sleep.
I was a virgin. So here's an example. These are brief examples that you would have seen, most likely, because they're very popular, whether they are cheesy blockbusters or auteur cinema. They predicted very specific years in the future. For instance, Clockwork Orange, which came out in the early 70s, took place in the year 1995. Escape from New York, which was made in 1981, took place in the year 1997. One of the more popular examples would have been Back to the Future 2, which takes place in the amazing future year of 2015.
That's so far in the future.
No one was alive then.
It's true, they weren't yet.
And then, how about the immortal classic Blade Runner by Ridley Scott? It takes place in the year 2019. Because we all remember our first flying car. It's a big day in a boy's life. The horribly apocalyptic Soylent Green, where the world's population is 40 billion, takes place in the year 2022.
Just passed.
The dark Children of Men, which is a fantastic film, which is the same premise as A Handmaid's Tale, takes place in the year 2027.
It's coming up.
No surprise, Michael Caine still rules in the year 2027. And then, of course, Terry Gilliam's classic about pandemics, 12 Monkeys, takes place in the year 2028. Not to mention classics like, I'm not going to say Demolition Man's a classic, so I'll skip that one. Steven Spielberg's Philip K. Dick work, Minority Report, takes place in the year 2054. Total Recall, another Philip K. Dick work, takes place in 2084.
Oh man, maybe in the Minority Report universe, it's actually RoboCop is happening at the same time.
Interesting.
It's just like one's in Detroit, one's in, I don't know, L.A. or wherever that's set.
Well, that's curious then, because like, how would the precog thing work in with the RoboCop? Wouldn't they just make a precog cop?
That's in Minority Cop Robo Report 2.
It stars Sonny Chiba. The translation wasn't great. A really young Jet Li, Sonny Chiba. Jackie Chan does a lot of the stunt work. In Hong Kong, it was called Badass Cop, but for some reason, in America, it just translated to all those things you just said.
Oh. I was like, where's this going?
Yeah, I know. I went a long way around for that one. And then everyone loves The Matrix, I guess.
Oh, the original.
Yeah, well, it takes place in the year 2199. Forbidden Planet, the classic Shakespeare's The Tempest, put to the background of science fiction. That takes place in the year 2220. And The Fifth Element takes place in the year 2263. And of course, you've got things like Logan's Run and all the Star Trek stuff and Idiocracy and Barbarella and Dune, which takes place in the year 27 bajillion or whatever the fuck it is.
10,190. Well, 192 is actually when it happens, but
yeah, but after the Butlerian Jihad, not even from now.
Yes. So you have BG
before Jihad. Oh, that's before Guild.
The Luddites destroyed. Yes, before Guild destroyed machines. 11,200 is the beginning of space travel. Well, 11,000 BG. The second interspace migrations. The Jews hide their identity from the non-Jews.
Wow, it always comes back to that, doesn't it?
That was a weird one when I was reading the later books of Dune, and it was like, oh, and the Jews are here, and they're still just the Jews, and
Jews in space.
I'm getting really into the Dune timeline here.
Of all times, for you to get deep into the Dune timeline.
Well, you brought me here.
But you're always deep into the Dune timeline, and this is the first time you're like, huh.
Well, no, I've looked this up before, but I mean, there's a lot.
You think so?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I don't know when it actually happens. Let me see. You keep talking, I'm going to deep dig. I'm going to find out.
So obviously, all of those dates did take place. The linear progression of time was never stymied at any point. But a lot of the classic science fiction films, which are dated in the future, have already lapsed. So we thought we'd talk about what they predicted, and then how close we were, and how completely batshit bonkers most of those things are.
Yeah, and what things they predicted and they got right, and which things they didn't quite.
Which is most of it. And we won't cover this, but this is just an example. The television show Space 1999, which, at the time, we managed to go from nothing to the moon in less than 10 years. So it seemed like the sky was the limit, literally. People just assumed we were going to be living on Mars by the late 90s, and we'd have people on a moon of Jupiter by the year 2010, as made famous by the book and movie 2010. But that didn't happen, and there are a lot of reasons why, but we're finally catching up with these eras that were supposed to be the distant future. Yeah, well, they just happened like 2 years ago. I don't know if you know the premise of Space 1999 out there, people, but the idea is that we have colonies on the moon, we have constant shuttles that go from Earth to the moon, and advanced technology that makes travel to the moon routine. And then the moon somehow gets knocked out of orbit from Earth.
Oh no.
Then it can't find Earth?
Wait, the moon can't find Earth?
Well, they're on the moon, and they can't find Earth. And it's like, well, you could probably see it. Even if you got knocked out of orbit, you could probably still look up and see Earth. But no, apparently it's in another fucking dimension or whatever the fuck happens.
Well, what the fuck happens to Earth at that point? If it loses its moon...
Well, they do actually address that in an episode, that it would be laid to waste. Earth would be a disaster.
Nice.
We'd be fucked.
I think that's what happened in Thundar the Barbarian, actually.
Is it really?
I believe that there is a rogue asteroid that breaks the moon in two,
Awesome.
and then it causes radical changes to the Earth and gives rise to mutants and super science and sorcery.
And blobs.
Well,
The-
blobs
the
are going to
to-
come.
That's a really fucking badass premise for a shitty Hanna-Barbera cartoon. It's like Cormac McCarthy's Muppet Babies, you know?
Yeah, let's do this weird 1994 pseudo-future where, like, the Earth is wrecked, and let's throw Conan in there, and let's
Yeah.
have little Flash Gordon and some heavy metal, and
Oh, yeah.
there you go.
All I remember is like them fighting on top of like burned out cars and like in ruins of cities. So does this exist in the same universe as Yogi Bear? Is this Yogi Bear's future?
Hey, boo-boo, we gotta watch out for these Karooks.
We gotta watch out for the raiding hordes. The wandering rape gangs again.
Sorry, boo-boo, I gotta let you go.
You dead weight, boo boo. You had to lose the leg. I can't carry you on my back forever.
Close your eyes, boo-boo, you don't want to see this.
He puts him down like in I Am Legend. Yeah, I mean that's a great premise actually, but yes, of course that's kind of what we're talking about. So let's see.
There's a few I think we'll probably talk about this particular episode. In the far future of 1997.
No, not when you and I were in high school.
I know not what you speak of.
It was Nukem High for sure.
So, if you didn't know, in 1997, the crime rate in the United States grew by 400%.
That seems right.
Things were going crazy. We were in the midst of this Cold War between Russia and China, and we decided to wall off the entire island of Manhattan and turn it into a prison with huge walls that are 15 meters high and guards and turrets. And then the president, he was flying over there. His plane got hijacked. Then he crashed there, and we had to send in our top agent, a criminal who used to be the baddest military dude in the world, a guy named Snake Plissken, to go get him and get him out. This is the documentary that was filmed in real time called Escape from New York.
Right. In which his landing pad, because he goes by glider, by the way, into Manhattan, is the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center.
Yeah. If we're getting into like things that they kind of got right, quote, terrorist hijacking a plane and flying it into the buildings of New York City.
Okay.
That did happen.
Within like a
say
5-year difference of real life?
Yeah. I mean, I would say on the scale of 0, it didn't happen at all like that, and 10, this is like a Nostradamus prediction of it definitely happened. I would say it's a 5.
Sure.
In the realm of like, kind of. But it is something you could technically say did kind of happen. Kind of happen. Now, as we all know, New York didn't get turned into the United States maximum security penitentiary. Now, this film came out in 1981, and during the 70s into the 80s, the crime rate had been steadily increasing. We could get into a deep dive of what was really behind that.
We can actually. It's actually super super easy. We can just tell you right off the bat. It was lead and gasoline. No, I'm not joking. That's literally
lead and gasoline.
Yeah, I'm not making this up. This was a huge study that they did. So if you look at violent crime around the world, especially in places like the United States, when they started putting lead in gasoline, and then it finally peaked in the early 90s. But then as soon as they banned lead and gasoline, it plummets dramatically. Like it's like a 1-to-1 because in
1982 and 2002, the phase out of lead gasoline in the U.S. was quote, responsible for approximately a 56% decline in violent crime.
Right, because some of the symptoms of lead poisoning, especially passive lead poisoning, like where it's in the air and not like you eating paint chips, is aggression, violent behavior, irrationality, mood swings, all of the things that would lead to violent crime. And since the moment we banned leaded gasoline, the crime rate has dropped steadily and never gone back up except during the pandemic.
The first meta-analysis of lead crime hypothesis was published in 2022. The lead crime hypothesis, a meta-analysis authored by Anthony Higney, Nick Hanley, and Mirko Moro, consolidates findings of 24 studies on the subject. It concluded that there is substantial evidence linking lead exposure to a heightened risk of criminal behavior, particularly violent crimes. This aligns with earlier research suggesting lead exposure may foster impulsive and aggressive tendencies, potential precursors to violent offenses.
Right, and which is why this became a trope in science fiction during the 70s and 80s, because this weird dystopian idea that crime was like, crime for crime's sake, and it was so depraved and so nonsensical to, I don't know, the regular, white American household or whatever. It wasn't like during the Depression where people stole because they were poor or hungry. These were violent crimes that just seemed to be because people were getting more violent, which unfortunately led to a lot of bunk science.
There's a lot of contributing factors there.
It doesn't really make sense, in reality, to just wall off an island instead of building a prison or whatever. Logistically, it doesn't really seem to make a lot of sense. But because major cities' actual urban populations had to become, in a lot of places, people of color because of white flight, a horribly racist practice, the commentary of just walling off a city that is already populated and is just a city is that, well, if they're living in an urban area like that, they're probably all criminals and just, fuck them all.
Yeah. I mean, there are people that got stuck when they made the prison. Cab was just a cabbie. He was a cab driver.
And before that, he was just a helicopter engineer.
Yeah, he just happened to be on the Poseidon when it sank.
He just happened to be Fatso Jetsam in From Here to Eternity.
He just happened to live a long and happy life because he jerked off a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I wouldn't say there's a whole lot that they really predict in Escape from New York that it really comes to pass or doesn't come to pass. There isn't a whole lot of super future tech or ideas that they highlight in the film.
Other than moral decay and...
Right.
It's satire.
It is. Especially knowing who John Carpenter is and his political beliefs. He's lambasting Reagan-era policies, pointing a spotlight on those things. I would say there's a little bit more going on in those areas in the subsequent sequel from 1996, Escape from L.A. This is set in 2013, 10 years ago from today.
And we all remember this.
In 2000, don't you remember the massive earthquake that struck Los Angeles, cutting it off from the mainland with the San Fernando Valley floods? It was at this time that our president, who was a theocrat, declared this a punishment from God Almighty. Upon winning, supplanted himself as the lifetime office holder of the presidency.
Right. George W. Bush won in 2004 especially. He won on the evangelical vote. Then you get Trump in 2016, which is 3 years after where this is supposed to take place, of a guy that admittedly wanted to declare himself president for life.
Mm-hmm.
Probably would have moved the capital to Florida or whatever.
Yeah, it would be at Mar-a-Lago's where
it would be at Mar-a-Lago, yeah.
Just like this particular president, he moves it from Washington to his hometown of Lynchburg, Virginia.
Oof.
Yeah, definitely saying something there. Mm-hmm.
Lynchburg.
And just like, say, Mike Pence might like to do, instituted strict morality laws banning things such as smoking, alcohol, drugs, premarital sex, firearms, profanity, and red meat.
Okay, that's a weird mixed bag, I gotta say.
It really is.
Conservatives are not going to ban smoking or alcohol or red meat. They would be like, I'm outlawing vegans. That would be the first thing you did, right? If you're some crazed zealot, right?
It's honestly a weird...
I think he was trying to seem like he wasn't being too biased when he did that. But...
Liberal firebrands and these conservative firebrands, where some of the discourse is gone, things... I keep being reminded by... maybe I'm on X too much, Twitter.
Don't call it that. Never call it that.
In certain cinematic circles, but I see like these people who are so shocked by, say, sex scenes and their complete lack of understanding for the motivation behind those, or how they fit within social construct of people's relationships, and being triggered by having to see them when they go to movies. I mean, it's just this weird prudification and conservative thought that's oddly crept in. It's like the Hays Code, but in a weird, malicious 1984 kind of way, where they've been conditioned to have these sexless... A lot of the ways you see people digesting films nowadays, or books, or TV shows, it's so odd. They're kind of taking it more as content. Will they watch a movie at 3 times speed, but with subtitles? And it's only about what the plot points are. It's not about like character or dialogue or context. They're just completely divorcing themselves from that. This just reminded me of that. Maybe I'm going off a little tangent.
You're right. There is no sex in movies anymore.
Yeah, and when there is, you get people freaking out about it for some reason.
Yeah. And it seems like the only acceptable sex in those situations is rape and the consequences of such sexual... I mean, you're not going to see a 9.5 weeks. It'd be scandalous.
Yeah, you get those things, but they're in small little indie films, and...
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, but you're always going to have those things, but there isn't having sex scenes in major adult features, dramas and mysteries and thrillers for adults, made by adults. That was normal.
What happened to the neo-noir movement in the 90s? Remember that?
Yeah?
Sliver and Jade and, all sorts of sexy, I'm sure better movies than those. Where is 9.5 weeks? Where is...
Yeah. Where's Fatal Attraction? Where's Body Heat?
Where's Disclosure? Yeah, exactly. Where is Body Heat? Wait, is that the one with Willem Dafoe?
Yeah, that's Willem Dafoe.
Where they brought in a stunt cock?
I can neither confirm nor deny said stunt cock, no.
So, Willem Dafoe, apparently, has an enormous dong.
All right.
And the director intentionally brought in a body double because he said that audiences wouldn't like Dafoe because...
Oh, you're talking about Dafoe. I thought you were talking about William Hurt.
No, why would I mention William Hurt?
He's the guy in Body Heat. That's who I thought you said. No, you're talking about Antichrist. That's the...
Am I talking... Whoa,
yeah.
No. I thought it was... No, it's before Antichrist.
No, it's Antichrist. Antichrist is where they brought in a stunt cock for Willem Dafoe. And I don't know about William Hurt's penis.
Nobody does. It's a mystery lost to time.
Someday, someone's gonna dig deep and find that thing.
It'd be really funny if, like, there's a whole scene where, like, William Hurt, like, takes off his pants slowly and he unzips it and out pops John Hurt.
Then pumps a little xenomorph out of him.
Yes, exactly, yes. Oh, that'd be so good. Out of his Quato right there. Out of the... In that film, they replaced Willem Dafoe with a body double, a stunt cock, because the director thought that his enormous penis would be confusingly large for the audience.
I don't get that. But I think that's also 2009. We've had 15 years of cool Dafoe in our lives since then.
True. And then also in Aquaman.
And also in Aquaman.
Mm-hmm. Which people love for some reason.
I don't think anybody loves.
No. I know a lot of people who, like, people I respect.
Loved Aquaman? I don't think they loved Aquaman.
A couple of them did.
Because the horrible place of Los Angeles has fallen into the ocean. It is an island. They decide to build walls around that as well. I don't know how much walls they really build.
No, I think it's just because it's an island.
Yeah, they just kind of isolate it. And if you break the law in this new fascist society, you can either lose U.S. citizenship or get permanently deported to New Los Angeles Island. Or you can just die.
Woohoo!
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that takes place in 2013, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
The film actually takes place in 2013, where there's a satellite system targeting electronic devices anywhere in the world that could render them useless.
The Sword of Damascus, yes?
The Sword of Damocles.
Damocles. I don't know why I said Domestus. Damocles, of course, obviously. The thing that's actually a thing. Yeah.
Yes, yeah, the thing that is actually a thing.
Right.
Indeed. Then you have this, I think he's a Peruvian revolutionary.
He's supposed to be Che Guevara.
Yeah, Cuervo Jones is his name.
Oh my God. Well,
Yeah.
oh, Jesus Christ. Well, and also another example of them trying to be like, hey, we're non-political because we're making leftists right-wingers too. It's the same thing as with the whole like banning smoking and red meat. What the fuck are you talking? It's all over the place.
So he uses a hologram to brainwash the daughter of the president so that he can try to use her to get the Sword of Damocles stuff and blah, blah,
Path of least resistance.
blah. So one thing that kind of they did predict is the use of holograms. That is something that can happen. I mean, you saw Tupac up on stage. Holograms are a thing.
I was going to say, like, if only they had used Tupac in this movie instead.
I think if you talked about remote super weapons that can target any electronic device in the world, I think there's probably some people online who would say this is a thing that is happening. So to get Snake to enter in and do what they want him to do, last time they injected him with an explosive device that would explode his arteries and kill him instantly. This one, they give him a virus that's going to kill him within 10 hours. A designed bioweapon.
Like
If
COVID.
that doesn't sound familiar. Indeed. This is a film that came out in 96, and one of the somewhat bigger characters in it is Hershey Las Palmas, formerly Carjack Malone, a trans woman and past criminal associate of Snake's. I guess at what point is representation positive or negative?
Yeah, you're really straddling the fence between Frankenfurter and the Crying Game. I don't really know what they're going for here.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look for things that have become more prevalent or more accepted in society. You know, here's a semi-main character that is here and interacting. I don't know.
I know. I watched Sleepaway Camp accidentally last night, so I understand.
Oh, yeah. Oof. Yeah. Not to give spoilers, but I'm going to spoil it for you. If you haven't seen Escape from LA and you want to,
he escapes.
Skip the next 30 seconds. At the end of the film, Snake uses the Sword of Damocles to shut off all the power on all electric devices across the Earth.
Hard restart.
Yeah. Some might say a great reset.
Oh, no.
That, certain people push all the time.
And using a fucking EMP. God damn it.
Yeah.
Jordan Sather write this movie?
Something I just found out. I was watching a video about a nuclear weapon expert who is ranking nuclear explosions within films. And he was talking about how if you detonate a nuclear weapon underground or in the water, it doesn't send out an EMP. The EMP is only if it's done in the atmosphere.
Oh, that's interesting.
I did not know that. So if you just had one, say, on the ground or underground or anything, it won't send off an EMP.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Obviously, these things all happened. This is all history I'm telling you about.
Yeah, this is a documentary filmed in real time.
Exactly. So that's your escapes. Consistent predictions of some major event happening. I think raising sea levels as well. That's going to be problematic.
That's where you get your water worlds.
I think there's a certain something to say about the way power is utilized politically at the highest level in America and a conservative bent that keeps creeping into our society in so many aspects. I mean, look, we just had Roe v. Wade just stripped away for us, and they're talking about going after Brown versus Board and, interracial marriage and all of these things. It's like...
Yep, and all because of theocratic ideologues. Now, this is going to be more obscure, and this is not something that I think a lot of people have actually seen, though it always stuck out in my mind because I knew that this date was coming up. Now, I'm going to give you an example of two different sci-fi premises that take place in the same year, and they couldn't be more divergent from each other, though actually remarkably similar. So, A Boy and His Dog is a 1975 American, people refer to it as a black comedy science fiction film.
What?
I don't know how funny it is, because I've seen it, and it's pretty dark.
I've seen it, and I've read the novella that it comes from.
Harlan Ellison, right?
Mm-hmm.
Our hero is a rapist. I think that's a completely misguided reading of it. But the movie, and it is very dark, and it is Harlan Ellison, so he wrote, of course, the most infamous episode of Star Trek, The City on the Edge of Forever, which created one of the greatest feuds in all of sci-fi history, because Harlan Ellison wrote Edith Keeler Must Die, and then Gene Roddenberry rewrote it, and then Harlan Ellison sued Gene, and it became this whole big thing. And even though it's one of the best Star Trek episodes of all time, it's a real debate on which one would have been a better version, but, that's beside the point. So, in this story, it is the year 2024.
Ooh.
In it, if I remember correctly, it is after the Fifth World War? It's either after the Fourth or the Fifth World War. I know that. I know it's an absurd thing where they're like, they don't really explain anything about it beforehand.
I mean, it's definitely a post-apocalyptic wasteland.
100%. So the premise is an 18-year-old boy who is played by a very young and very dapper Don Johnson, wandering the wastelands that were already wastelands of the southwestern United States. His name is Vic, and he's really close to being a feral child. I mean, he has some sort of structure. He kind of reminds me of Max from the second one. Which one was that? Road Warrior? He doesn't have any formal education. He has no moral compass in any way, shape, or form. And he is accompanied by a telepathic dog named Blood. Maybe that's all you need to know, because he's already got a telepathic dog.
It's his only friend. Essentially, all Vic wants is some food and women to rape. And Blood is able to sniff them out. And in exchange, Vic gives Blood food and companionship as Blood finds women for him to brutalize. Or sometimes he will take women and then they will sell them if he needs bullets or canned goods or the like. But it's essentially a two-person rape gang kind of thing.
Yeah, so that's our hero, ladies and gentlemen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So it is a little difficult to sort of like get behind this character at all. The commentary is pretty clear because there is no social structure. There is no moral or ethical structure, which, okay, fine. That's fine. It's just kind of hard to root for this guy. It feels very Cormac McCarthy in that sense,
Yeah, I think even McCarthy had a little more grace.
Yeah, in The Road,
nuance.
At least he had a kid that was more pure than this relationship.
I mean, yeah, in the breakdown of society, you're always going to have sexual violence, predatory behavior. These things just naturally come out. Now, rape within the context of these stories and what you're trying to say about that and the characters experiencing that, I think that takes a lot of style and nuance to make it a worthy effort.
Well, also, you have to really, really take into context how society at large at that time views those things, because I don't know if you remember Saturday Night Fever, but other movies that feature rape usually end up with a comeuppance. It's a different commentary. Like, you could say something about I Spit on Your Grave or Kill Bill or whatever, but the rape thing is in a different context. It is always avenged tenfold. But in these type of films, rape is not only is it not treated the same way, but it's not, there's no comeuppance. There's no price to pay for it. It's just kind of like, well, that's how the world works. Like that's one of the only other films I can think of where that's the case. I mean, we're not dealing with Last Tango in Paris here, but it's a different kind of commentary. That's why I always go to that one, because that one is very clear cut.
Right. I think in Road Warrior you have rape as well.
That's true, which is awful.
Again, there's no comeuppance in that. It's just a fact of life.
Well, doesn't he, like, kill those guys later?
So in the first people you see get raped, nothing happens to them. It's just kind of happening in the background. There is one way you could read Lord Humongous's number 2, the guy with the mohawk.
Mm-hmm. Who's also in Weird Science, yeah.
Also in Weird Science, but he has a companion. You could read that as they have a loving relationship, or you could read it as his personal property. It's not really explained, and said companion is quickly done away with. So,
yeah, I mean, unfortunately, as a part of post-apocalyptic genre, misogyny is a big deal, which is one of the reasons it's a great medium to do social commentary. It's always a commentary on capitalism, hubris, either politically or personally, transphobia, homophobia, like all sorts of flaws of humanity, and how if we didn't have the structures that we have now, how off the fucking rails we would be with these things.
It is something that we handle with more attention and characterize generally better. There's an approach that I think at the time when, was it 75, when A Boy and His Dog came out, it was a different time of filmmaking. It was a different society.
Right. I mean, that's specifically why I mentioned Saturday Night Fever, because, like, it's around this time. It was like, oh, that kind of sucks, but I'm still the main character. Bye. Oh, okay.
Or you can even look at stuff like Revenge of the Nerds, like you brought up before, in the 80s, Sexual assault wasn't...
It was charming, or at least a boyish prank.
It could be. I think there's also something of the same time. You see stuff like in A Clockwork Orange, where it's like, oh, some of these women being raped, maybe they like it. Maybe that's what they're there for. Even
though A Clockwork Orange very, very much takes the alternate angle to the normalization of rape.
Yes.
To the extreme, actually.
There's the sped up sex scene between the two women, where you can distinctly see them kind of getting uninterested and getting ready to leave, and then he takes them and undresses them again and beds them again.
Yeah, that's true.
But
he does get...
Yes,
he does get punished for the real...
I would say in the totality of what that film is trying to say about rape is that it is a negative and it does need punishment and it is not allowed in society. And
technically, the entire thing is about rape, because reprogramming of him is break him of any sort of violent sexual idea. It is not just commentary on rape, but commentary on how society deals with rape, and how, man, both of those suck. Yeah, and so, like, Boy and His Dog deals with a lot of ridiculous Harlan Ellison sci-fi tropes. Obviously, the dog is genetically engineered to be telepathic, though he can't take care of himself. I don't know how it works, his brain is so small.
If I remember right, he was engineered during the war for war purposes, and then he survives after that, and because he was genetically manipulated, he has lost those dog instincts to take care of himself.
Okay.
And so then he finds Vic, and they form this bond, and they have this barter system between themselves.
I don't even know if you got that far in the Venture Brothers, but they did the whole, Scooby-Doo gang as real people, and Scooby was a telepathic... Most likely wasn't actually doing it, most likely that Shaggy was schizophrenic or, bad acid trips, but essentially became Son of Sam. Okay, so that's one example of what's happening in the year 2024. And now, in the exact opposite and yet very similar vein, in the year 2024, according to the best Star Trek series, Star Trek Deep Space Nine, in the episode Past Tense, a 2-part episode from the 3rd season, which are the 57th and 58th episodes if you're counting, and interestingly enough, the last 2 episodes of DS9 to air before Voyager. In it, at that point, Commander Sisko, Dr. Julian Bashir and Jadzia Dax tried to beam down to Earth from their newly added starship, the Defiant. Then an accident happens, a zany Benny Hill type mix-up, and they ended up materializing in San Francisco in the year 2024. Instead of, at that point, that would have been 23 67 or 8. No, before that. Yeah, that's about right. Let's say 2367. It's in that vein, and I'm pretty sure I'm in a good window there. And so Cisco and Bashir are found on the street unconscious by a couple of cops. Kind of cops. They're like specialized cops that deal with the homeless and things like that. They believed them to be wayward vagabonds, and by law, homelessness, basically they have criminalized homelessness in this scenario. And
well, somebody's got to.
Well, thank you, Gavin Newsom. They are then taken to what is referred to as a sanctuary district, which sounds so positive, which is literally a ghetto with walls around it that you're not allowed to leave. And it's specifically for the poor or the unhomed, those who can't afford psychiatric care. So a lot of, you'd see a homeless schizophrenic, that kind of thing. And the idea was, supposedly in this scenario, that the sanctuary district was a positive because then at least they get help and a structure and a support system and access to what have you. But it's actually, instead of positive, is a neoliberal nightmare. Out of sight, out of mind. Now, in this episode, they realize that they are only days away from a landmark event in Star Trek canon's world history that leads to the utopia that eventually forms, called the Bell Riots, which is, like it sounds, a violent riot in one of the sanctuary districts, the one in San Francisco, that galvanizes the working classes and even the media-aware upper classes as to the plight of those in sanctuary districts, and then eventually will lead to an outrage that leads to a reinstitution of something that had already been done before but had been repealed by a conservative government, the Federal Employment Act, which is essentially the New Deal but permanent. By the way, off the dome, bitches. I ain't reading this shit. This is I know. So, a man considered a civil rights hero named Gabriel Bell took hostages in a demonstration, a basic dog day afternoon sort of scenario where his demands were only the reinstatement of the Federal Employment Act and the shuttering of sanctuary districts. Not money, not material gain, or anything crazy, or anything like in RoboCop. It was a fair and fighting chance for the lower classes. So the twist of the episode is that tensions are building inside the sanctuary district. Ron Howard's brothers there. They get into a big kerfuffle with some of the rival gangs that are inside the sanctuary district. And one of the people that tries to help Cisco and Bashir is Gabriel Bell, and he gets shot in the crossfire of a fight that never should have happened, and he dies. And so Ben Sisko realizes this and decides to impersonate Gabriel Bell based on his knowledge of history, which is also really interesting commentary about like not meeting your heroes and the symbolic nature of heroism. It's an interesting commentary that actually they don't really address very much until a later episode where they chastise him for traveling back in time.
Or the Zephram Cochrane thing from
yes.
First Contact.
Sure, absolutely. Good point. Don't try and be a great man, just be a man and let history sort out the rest. And then Zephram Cochrane says, rhetorical nonsense. That episode deals with the pitfalls of capitalism, the failures of governments, the othering of the poor or minorities or what have you, even though they do a lot of predicting the internet, which is very funny because like there is a scene where they're trying to log in into a system inside the sanctuary district. They're using a terminal that obviously is just a web browser, internet, interface, and they keep complaining because ads keep popping up. And it's like, wow, okay, I'll give you that. That's pretty good. Because this was the 90s, what happens is the government storms the sanctuary district, tanks and assault rifles and military equipment. that's when the real Gabriel Bell is supposedly killed. So the commentary is obviously the handling of Ruby Ridge, of Waco, basically everywhere where the U.S. government really fucking dropped the ball on how to deal with dissent, but also dealing with the same commentary about how horrible the conservative governments of the 60s and 70s dealt with dissent of the Black Panthers, the Weather Underground. That time a plane dropped a bomb on, was it Philadelphia? On a black neighborhood.
Yeah.
And it made sense at the time, too, because they're making commentary about that, but also in a time when it was happening again, but just in a different context. So there we have two different versions of the year 2024, one of which is a post-apocalyptic nightmare that has seen the breakdown of all society, and the other is a pre-apocalyptic nightmare where there's a breakdown of the moral and ethical fabric of society. But in the Star Trek version, that catalyzes change towards something positive. In the other, it's a nihilistic hellscape. So, those are just two examples that we can get into. This is a very complicated and very nuanced topic that we didn't think we would have to get as in-depth in as we are going to have to, but we will get to more of these in later episodes.
Yeah, you got more coming down the pipeline, that is for sure, because there's a lot of different versions of the future that did both come to pass and did not come to pass.
There's so many of them that I feel like we could get into, but so many of these are so nuanced and deserve a really deep dive that, some of these we're going to have to get into.
We literally did research on multiple other films that when we were doing it, we're like, oh, there's no way we can fit all of these into an episode. So,
oh no, not at all. I mean, and yeah, we could just go, hey, Back to the Future 2 takes place in 2015, in which they predict that the Cubs had just won the World Series. The Cubs win the World Series in 2016.
Yeah, we're not a goddamn listicle. This isn't a BuzzFeed.
Damn right.
We got stuff to talk about. Got to get into it.
We're explaining this shit. We're not just telling you. We're explaining it. There's a big difference between just saying howdy do and telling you what the fuck the score is. So we're going to tell you more in subsequent episodes.
Indeed. And if you'd like to hear more of those, you can like and subscribe to this podcast. Get it in your particular podcast feed. You can share it with your friends. You can rate us 5 rape-sniffing dogs on...
Wow, let's not do... How about...
All right.
Let's back up off of that one.
How about 5 snakes? Pliskins or otherwise, so we can play Bangkok rules.
Yes, a good old-fashioned Mexican standoff. Bangkok rules.
Bangkok rules. I still don't know what the hell that means, but...
I don't either. Does that have to do with the musical Chess?
Oh, you're talking about One Night in Bangkok by Murray Head?
Is that where it comes from? I don't know. It's the only thing I can think of. I mean, it's obviously not like Only God Forgive.
We're going to have a short pod where we're going to break down the nuances and the details of Murray Head's One Night in Bangkok.
Great song!
I also think a great song.
Nobody knows that fucking musical, though.
I didn't know the musical until, I don't know, maybe a year or so ago. It's like, oh,
it's
this
a
is
musical
a part
about
of it.
Playing chess internationally.
I know. I was like, what? I mean, obviously that's what the song is about, but I didn't know it came from a larger piece.
It's essentially that Netflix show.
Queen's Gambit?
Yeah, but a musical.
I also tried to listen to other Murray Head music. Awful.
I'm not surprised.
Horrendous.
Yeah. Well.
It doesn't sound anything like One Night in Bangkok either.
That song fucking rules, though.
It does fucking rule.
Yeah, I'm with you.
So yeah, if you are tired of listening One Night in Bangkok and you want to listen to more podcasts, we'll be here for you. You can follow us on social media.
If you want to give us 5 nights in Bangkok, we would appreciate it. Please do all of these things. So don't forget to pay your tabs. Don't forget to clean up after yourselves to some sort of reasonable degree. Do not forget to support your local comic shops and retailers. And from Dispatch Ajax, we would like to say, Godspeed, fair wizards. Makes a hard man
humble.
Humble.
I think it makes a hard man humble. I think
It's either that or tumble.
I don't think it makes a hard man tumble.
Yeah, it's about gymnastics.
You seen one crowded, polluted, stinking town?
It's about gymnastics and chess.
Chessastics.
The World Thailand Gymnastics Chess International Competition.
And ladyboys.
And ladyboys. And David Carradine.
That's too many belts.
Yikes.
And with that, let's wrap it up.
Only God will forgive that joke.
Please, go away.